Please, Chuppel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question number 12.
Mr. Speaker, improving performance is a top priority for this government as we establish Great British Railways. We meet regularly with managing directors of train operating companies and their Network Rail counterparts to demand action to raise standards. Great British Railways will reunite the management of track and train and will take joined-up whole-system decisions that improve performance for the benefit of passengers and taxpayers alike.
Please, Chuppel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Trans-Pennine Upgrade is the biggest rail infrastructure project in the country, and my constituency of Huddersfield is at the centre of it. One of the main benefits will be more reliable and faster trains for passengers. Can the Minister update the House on the project and confirm what steps are being taken to ensure local communities like those in Huddersfield fully benefit from improvements in rail performance?
My honourable friend is absolutely right to highlight the importance of this investment for her constituency. The rail upgrade will deliver a doubling of seats between Huddersfield and Manchester and a 30% increase between Huddersfield and Leeds. Service reliability will also improve. 60% of the workforce will be employed within 25 miles of the route and 66% of spend will be within the local supply chain, leading to local growth and jobs. Good news all round.
John Law.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to improve rail performance in my constituency by extending the Borders Railway. Extending the Borders Railway from Tweedbank to Hoyk, Newcastle and on to Carlisle has great local support and has cross-party support. So can the Minister confirm that UK Government's share of the funding for the feasibility study as part of the Borderlands growth deal is confirmed and will be released to Scottish Borders Council imminently?
I understand that officials in my department are speaking with Scottish colleagues and I hope to be in a position to say more on this soon, potentially as part of the spending review.
Sir Edwards.
Question number 14, Mr. Speaker.
This government is committed to growth, which regional airports support by serving their local communities, creating jobs and acting as gateways to international opportunities. Heathrow expansion could enable more regions to access a bigger international network through their local airports, further boosting productivity.
Sir Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In my constituency of Tamworth, the largest sectoral employer is logistics. Tamworth sits within the Golden Triangle for distribution, centred around the European rail link. Within this hub is East Midlands Airport, which handles approximately 440,000 tonnes of freight each year, second only to Heathrow. So can I ask what steps the Minister will take to fuel economic growth across the West Midlands, reviewing capacity at our regional airports, including Birmingham?
The honourable member is exactly right. Freight is usually important for growth. That's why the Chancellor recently announced plans to build a new advanced manufacturing and logistics park at East Midlands Airport, which will unlock up to £1 billion worth of investment and 2,000 jobs at the site.
We now go to Topicals to Anne Baxter.
Number 1, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we're getting on with delivering this government's plan for change. Last week, I approved upgrades to 4 major road projects across Wiltshire, Leeds, Essex and Buckinghamshire. This £90 million investment will reduce journey times, ease congestion and improve safety. This is on the back of drivers switching to electric cars in record-breaking numbers, with sales in January over 40% higher compared to last year and nearly 20,000 public charge points added in 2024 alone. We're also backing the West Midlands Metro extension with a £205 million investment that takes trams from Wednesbury to Brierley Hill. We're cutting journey times and improving connections for towns with poor public transport links. And finally, Mr. Speaker, yesterday we announced a £300 million investment to get Britain walking and cycling with hundreds of new footpaths and cycle lanes. Mr. Speaker, we're delivering the basics of a better transport system. That means improving the everyday journeys which drive economic growth and improve lives.
Joanna Baxter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I recently met with key Scottish stakeholders to discuss proposals to bring a metro scheme to the Glasgow City region interconnecting more and more parts of our region, including the towns and villages in my Paisley and Renfrewshire South constituency. Does the Secretary of State agree with me that it's vital the Scottish Government shows the same ambition for growth in Scotland as the UK Government has in its recent transport announcements? And will she work with the Scottish Government to ensure that this project maximises investment and opportunity for my constituents?
I will always work closely with colleagues in the Scottish Government to ensure that this Government's ambitions for transport reach all corners of the UK. The Scottish Government has had a record settlement through the budget, and so I look forward to hearing more about plans for a greater Glasgow Metro scheme as they develop.
Secretary of State Gareth Bacon.
Mr. Speaker, Heathrow Airport is already the single largest site payer of business rates in the country, paying approximately £124 million annually. To fund the Chancellor's next spending spree, the Valuation Office Agency is currently revaluating airports in England and Wales, and any significant increase could impact on Heathrow's ability to fund airport expansion and a third runway. Is the Secretary of State aware of the latest estimate of how much Heathrow's business rates will increase by?
Well, I thank the honourable member for his question, and this was a policy cooked up by the Evaluation Office under HMRC by the last government, and we have engaged with airports on this matter and asked them to continue to engage with the Evaluation Office going forward.
Bacon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I noticed that the Minister didn't answer my question, so I will assist him. The estimate is that Heathrow's rates bill will increase fivefold to £600 million annually, putting substantial additional pressure on Heathrow's finances. In the light of that, can the Minister confirm whether or not the long-standing policy that the full cost of a third runway, including related works like relocating, tunnelling or bridging over the M25, will be fully funded by the private sector and not by the taxpayer?
The Airport National Policy Statement from 2018, which was 2 governments ago, made it clear that any proposal, and we haven't had a proposal that's come forward, should treat surface access appropriately, and that should be funded by the private sector where possible.
John Whitney. John Whitney.
Mr. Speaker, residents in Ashbourne have been left feeling hopeless and frustrated after waiting decades for a relief road. Over 700 HGVs pass through the town each day, endangering local pedestrians, increasing pollution and causing significant congestion. Would the Minister meet with me regarding the need to install a relief road for Ashbourne?
As my honourable friend knows, delivering a transport system that meets local, regional and national needs will play a vital role in delivering the missions of this government. I encourage him to continue to work with Derbyshire County Council, which will hopefully be under new leadership in May, and with our excellent East Midlands Mayor Claire Ward to advocate for his constituents' priorities, and I would of course be happy to meet him to discuss this.
Spokesperson Paul Collar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In her previous role as Deputy London Mayor for Transport, the Secretary of State stated she was, I quote, clear in her opposition to a third runway at Heathrow. Can I ask the Secretary of State whether she is still clear in her opposition, and if not, what has changed her mind?
Mr. Speaker, when I was Deputy Mayor for Transport in London, I was speaking in that capacity at that time, reflecting the views of the Mayor of London and City Hall on a previous Heathrow expansion scheme. As Secretary of State, I will consider any airport expansion proposals brought forward on their merits and in line with existing processes. Balancing economic growth and our environmental obligations is central to all of my work in this role, and I will always act in the national interest, doing what is right for the country as a whole.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At least 9 major roads in my constituency of Bournemouth West will be affected by roadworks in the next week. Seemingly endless utility works and roadworks are a crucial issue for my constituents, who have told me it makes them late for work, school pickup, even hospital appointments. So can the Minister tell me what steps her department is taking to improve the situation for my constituents?
Well, I thank her for the question. This government stands with local road users who are frustrated by roadworks which cause unnecessary disruption. And whilst councils and utility companies should always work together to minimise the impacts of their works, we are also taking action. We're doubling fixed penalty notices for utility companies that don't comply with certain requirements for carrying out their street works. And we've also extended overrun charges of up to £10,000 per day to weekends and bank holidays to prevent those overrunning roadworks.
Charlie Jewis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Open access operators like Hull Trains offer excellent, cheap, unsubsidised intercity services to locations across the north. So why are ministers trying to block their expansion and stifle growth?
So stay.
There's a balance to be struck here. Services such as those that run to Hull, I welcome. They open up new routes, new connectivity. But I have asked the Office of Rail and Road to consider the balance in the revenue that they abstract from the public operators, and also to make sure that we are using constrained capacity on our network appropriately to deliver excellent services for passengers.
Lindsay Farnwell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The RAC recently reported that potholes in Derbyshire are the worst in the country. But rather than welcoming over £75 million of funding to the East Midlands, the Conservatives at Derbyshire County Council claim this is not new money and it's bound up in red tape. Does the Minister agree with me that these are just more excuses and that the Conservative-controlled Derbyshire County Council should stop complaining and start fixing our roads?
Well, my honourable friend is absolutely right. The state of our roads is a daily reminder of Tory failure, and that's why this government has provided record funding to fix them. Derbyshire is getting its share of the extra £20 million going to the East Midlands Combined Authority. We expect them to get on with the job and to tell local residents how they're intending to use that extra taxpayers' money that they're getting.
Dave Dugan. Not here. Jonathan Brash.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituent, along with many other people in Hartlepool, have complained about the shocking underperformance of Northern Rail. He's witnessed passengers being asked to wait in toilets in order to allow more people onto the train. Services are frequently cancelled, promises of additional carriages have not materialised, and residents are regularly left stranded at stations. Will the Minister work with me to fix this unacceptable level of service?
Minister.
Thank my friend for his question. Ministers and officials are in regular contact with Northern. We recognise the performance is totally unacceptable and the challenges Northern faces means it will take time to become stable and a reliable service. Would be absolutely delighted to work with him.
Bob Blackman.
Mr. Speaker, as you will know, I very rarely, if ever, agree with the Mayor of London, Steve Clark. However, the Secretary of State has answered the position in relation to her change of heart in the position, but will she commit to ensure that any proposal coming forward for a third runway at Heathrow will have a full impact assessment before any proposal is approved or denied?
Mr. Speaker, I fully support the Chancellor in calling for fresh proposals for Heathrow to come forward. Some of our airports in the South East are running at or near capacity. We can't pretend that's not the case, and I'm not prepared to be part of a government that ducks the difficult decisions. As the person who may ultimately be taking planning decisions on any application for a third runway at Heathrow, I will judge any scheme on its merits. We will, of course, be updating the airport's national policy statement, and any expansion scheme must meet our legal environmental obligations.
Already contribute significantly to the UK economy, including Exeter with life sciences and climate tech. However, we're held back from reaching our full potential by underinvestment in transport connectivity, made worse by upcoming works at Old Oak Common and the continuing bottleneck of the A303. Will the Minister commit to developing a strategic investment plan to ensure that the South West Peninsula has the transport infrastructure it needs to unlock further growth?
Thank the Honourable Friend for his question. As I've said before, growth is the priority mission of this government. We're committed to empowering local leaders. A regional transport strategy and a strategic investment plan for the South West has been developed by the subnational transport body Peninsula Transport.
Cameron Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As well as being home to both GCHQ and NATO's Allied Rapid Reaction Corps headquarters, Gloucestershire has the largest concentration of cyber tech business and aerospace engineering firms outside of London. But Gloucestershire, particularly Tewkesbury, is also subject to slow, unreliable and grossly outdated rail services. It is also underserved by road transport links eastward. The government recently announced that it will develop a Silicon Valley between Milton Keynes...
Order, we're on topicals. I think you need an adjournment debate. Come on, who's going to answer that?
I will certainly meet with the honourable gentleman to discuss this matter.
Ruth Gadbury, Chair of the Select Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Department for Transport analysis carried out in 2017 showed that expanding Heathrow would, by 2050, displace 27,000 jobs from the UK regions to London and 17 million fewer passengers using non-London airports compared to not expanding Heathrow. Is the Minister therefore hoping that the same analysis done now would come to a different conclusion in order to ensure that UK economic growth really does benefit all UK regions and not just West London?
The government is committed to regional airports. I proudly possess my Yes to R2 badge today when we built a second runway in 2001 in Manchester. It's quite the opposite. The AMPS in 2018 made the expectations that connections from Heathrow to regional airports would increase if Heathrow were to expand, increasing productivity in those regions as well.
Martin Vickers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Northern Trains provide one train per day on the Gainsborough-Brigg-Cleethorpes line. Would the ministers agree that one train a day is pretty pointless? And could the minister arrange a meeting with myself and other MPs affected with the appropriate minister to discuss how we move forward on providing a better service?
Reliable, frequent train services are important no matter where in the country you live, and I will ask the Rail Minister for a meeting as he describes.
Alison Taylor.
Speaker, would the Minister agree that achieving economic growth requires sustained investment in our transport infrastructure? And would she be willing to visit Glasgow International Airport to learn more about how transport infrastructure can assist with the further development of the proposed investment zone in my constituency?
I agree that investment in our transport infrastructure across the country is essential for our growth mission. I'm aware of the investment zone bid involving Glasgow Airport, and my honourable friend, the Aviation Minister, would be delighted to visit in the near future.
Mundell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't know if the Secretary of State is aware, but when there are serious weather or technical issues at Heathrow, large swathes of British Airways flights between London and Scotland are automatically cancelled. Now, British Airways say that if her officials, the Civil Aviation Authority, Heathrow and other airlines worked together, even in these circumstances, those cancellations could be minimised. So would she facilitate those discussions?
The member raises an important point. The resilience of the UK aviation sector is important and key to success, so we will facilitate any discussions to make sure we're always on an improvement trajectory.
Rachel Maskell.
Mr. Speaker, disabled people's access was a condition of planning to open up the planning for the York Central development. However, I'm hearing that it's going to be bypassed and the planning will go ahead without putting disabled access on, which will clearly impede disabled people. So can we ensure that that difficult engineering work is undertaken before that planning is granted?
Accessibility to all our transport modes is extremely important to this government. I'll be delighted to meet with my honourable friend to discuss this matter further.
Will Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Despite my constituency of Woking only being a stone's throw away from Heathrow, we have no direct rail link to the country's busiest airport. Last week, Heathrow Southern Railway applied to the government for a business case for these plans. When will the government consider that to ensure my constituents can get a train to Heathrow?
As well as the question of how many planes take off and land at Heathrow, the question of how people get to the airport is absolutely critical. So he makes an important point, and I'd be happy to discuss it further with him.
Murphy.
Learner drivers in Basingstoke have been left stranded for months and in some cases years unable to book a driving test. It's affecting their jobs, education and the local economy. Does the Secretary of State agree with me that urgent action is needed to extend test centre hours, ramp up the recruitment of examiners and also to clamp down on the rip-off companies booking multiple slots only to flog them at higher prices?
Well, my honourable friend is absolutely right to raise his concerns on behalf of learner drivers. On the 18th of December, DVSA set out a 7-point plan which recognises the need to fix the driving test booking system and get new drivers on the road, and I'll be holding them to account for delivering on that plan and the changes that he and his constituents need to see.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When the previous government cancelled HS2, they promised over £4 billion of project money for projects in the North and Midlands. I wondered if the government still planned to deliver on that and when we should expect to see that money in the North.
I hate to tell the honourable gentleman, but it was fantasy money. We're working through a pipeline of transport infrastructure projects and we'll be making announcements alongside the outcome of the spending review.
Josh Dean.
Long-promised Platform 1 lift at Hertford North Station, due to be delivered under the Access for All scheme, has been delayed yet again, leaving some of my disabled constituents travelling back up the line, getting a different train to Platform 2 so they can use the lift there. Will the appropriate minister meet with me to discuss how we can urgently drive this lift project forward for my constituents?
Well, my honourable friend is absolutely right to raise concerns about disabled access at his local station. We want to ensure that everyone is able to access our public transport networks, and I would be happy to ensure that I or one of my colleagues meets with him.
Jim Dixon.
Mr. Speaker, on the economic growth we've been discussing, I wonder if the Secretary of State could clarify, for the benefit of the party opposite, that economic growth depends on rather more than a well-oiled revolving door between the Tory party and big business, a door through which the former Tory Transport Minister and current member of the other place unsuccessfully attempted to walk last week.
Delivering economic growth requires a proper plan to be investing in our transport infrastructure, and that's exactly what this government is determined to deliver.
Okay. Lawrence Turner.
Mr. Speaker, once Birmingham's Camp Hill line reopens, we will need track investment if we are to restore the pre-pandemic service frequencies on the cross-city line, including to Northfield and Longbridge. So will the Minister look in full at the case for upgrading Kings Norton Station?
I know my honourable friend is an assiduous and informed campaigner for improved rail schemes for his constituents. He will know that funding for the Midlands Rail Hub includes designs for the reinstatement of the island platforms at Kings Norton, and whilst decisions still need to be taken on future investment, I know he will be pushing for construction to start as soon as possible.
Josh Fenton Glenn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Calder Valley line was listed as a top priority for improvements by Transport for the North's Electrification Task Force 10 years ago, back in 2015. Yet my constituents are still waiting. Will the Minister commit to this government delivering the infrastructure that the last government couldn't for my constituents?
Network Rail are currently completing a strategic outline business case covering electrification of the Calder Valley line. The business case will be considered within the context of the wider electrification strategy to determine how we deliver the best possible benefits across the region.
Sam Rushworth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Next month, railway enthusiasts from around the world will be coming to my constituency as we mark the 200th anniversary of the Stockton and Darlington Railway, which took off from the town of Shildon. So will the Right Honourable Lady ask the Railway Minister to meet with myself and other MPs along that route to talk about how the government can be part of those celebrations?
I am sure that will be an invitation that the Rail Minister couldn't possibly refuse.
And on that basis, I look forward to a minister opening at the Coppell railway station, or at least doing the impact study on the main line. Right, let us now come to the urgent question. Let the front benches change over.
See you later, lads.